It's the Opperman Report. Join digital forensic investigator and PI Ed Opperman for an in-depth discussion of conspiracy theories, strategy of New World Order resistance, high-profile court cases in the news, and interviews with expert guests and authors on these topics and more. It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, private investigator Ed Opperman. You can find me at Opperman Investigations and Digital Forensic Consulting, either if you go to my website, emailrevealer.com, or if you just email me directly at oppermaninvestigations@gmail.com. Our guest today is Lynn Crook, and she's written this book about the false memory syndrome. It's called False Memories, The Deception That Silenced Millions. You can find her at her website, lynncrook.com, and she's also on Facebook, Lynn, Lynnncrook. Lynn Crook, are you there?
I am here, Ed. Thank you.
No, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. It's kind of a last-minute scheduling, and then we had to kind of adjust the time, so I really, really appreciate your flexibility. Before we get started, tell us about yourself. Who is Lynn Crook?
Well, I grew up in Washington State. I'm the oldest of 6 kids. My father was a doctor, and as a student, I fell in love with French. So I went to the University of Washington, majored in French, lived in France, and loved the language. And then I got involved in teaching high school, and I loved high school kids, so I got a master's degree in high school counseling. And eventually I ended up in a sexual assault center, where I learned a lot about sexual assault, and I started having panic attacks at work, and that's actually what resulted in this book, what happened to me at work.
Gotcha. Okay, so you didn't realize why you were going into this kind of career, counseling people in a sexual assault, but I guess looking back in hindsight, it was because of what happened to you as a child.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I just thought everyone was so brave, and I loved the job, and I had no idea that I was one of those too.
Okay, so you know what? Let's work this in reverse then. Okay, so you work in the sexual assault organization here, and you start having panic attacks. Is that what you said?
Yeah, I did.
And then
I thought all I needed was a vacation, so I took a vacation.
Where'd you go?
I went to California with my husband.
Okay.
To San Francisco. We had a great time. Great food there.
Yeah. Well, but I guess it didn't solve this issue with the panic attacks, right?
No, it didn't. No, I got back and I had one therapy session, and I went home and I thought, oh, okay. Well, and I assured myself it only happened once. But I didn't tell anyone because I was too embarrassed.
Now, that's interesting. Yeah, when you go into a therapy session and you just describe to the therapist, right away they can kind of tune in and figure out what happened right away from an outside vantage point, right?
I don't think so.
No? Okay.
What do you think? If I tell them what happened, if I tell them that, say, my father did X, yeah, then they can get it right away. Gotcha.
Okay, because well, I don't want to get into too much detail, but it's just a certain situation where describing certain symptoms, then right away the therapist said, well, this is what happened. But now let's get into this here. So how did it go with you? The first session with the therapist, you remembered what happened or?
No, I didn't remember what happened. I just remembered that something happened during therapy, and I told the therapist something I'd never told anyone before, that it wasn't necessarily about sexual abuse.
Okay.
And I was confused, and I panicked, and I wanted to get out of that room as fast as possible because I think unconsciously I knew that I was about to tell. So I needed to get home, and that night, looking out at the rain falling down the nighttime window, I remembered something that happened in a shower, and I was shocked, and I immediately dismissed it as no big deal. But it was a big deal. And I think that what I did was to remember the easiest stuff at first. So,
so this was an incident in the shower with your father.
yeah, with my father.
Was there any participation with your mother as well, too?
Any what part? I think that my mother participated, but in the early days, I don't think she liked it.
Okay.
So she stopped and she just stayed out of the room. But she knew.
Okay.
Of course.
Okay, so you had this first revelation to yourself, but then when you kind of talked yourself out of it, is that what happened?
No, I just said I can't possibly tell anyone because it's too embarrassing. I don't want them to know this about me. And so my husband says it took me 3 months to tell him, but I'm sure it didn't take that long. And I hope it took just a couple of weeks because I couldn't tell him because I thought he would leave me if he found out that my father had molested me. Yeah, I thought so.
And what year was this? Because it's a different world now. What year was this? This is like in the 80s, right?
This was in 1989, February.
Yes, and it's a whole different world now. Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Now, so 1989, okay, and even then. So finally, what happens next? You're talking to your husband, now he knows. Now what happens next?
Then, as I remember more, I tell my siblings, and we decide to meet in Seattle, and we all share what we remembered. And I wish that all survivors could do that, because if you get your siblings to talk about it beforehand, before they talk to the molester, that they're a lot more open about it. So my case was corroborated. I had someone who always remembered. I had someone who remembered partial stuff. And eventually in 1991, I decided to sue for damages.
Now, this first meeting with your siblings, did they remember right away? Were they holding back, or their memory also had to be jogged, or?
They remembered.
So they were living with this the whole time. They never forgot.
Yeah, they never forgot. Like one sister who always remembered, it was acts, but she didn't know that it was sexual abuse. It was just something that she had always known that Dad had done. But no one told her it was sexual abuse. No one told her it was a crime.
Really? In 1989, she didn't realize that this was abnormal, unnatural, that this was considered
No.
taboo, forbidden? Really? That's fascinating.
No, it's amazing.
Yeah,
it is. And she's a nurse.
Well, and wait a second. In 1989, nurses were mandatory reporters back in 1989, weren't they?
Teachers were nurses, probably. Yeah.
Probably, yes. Right. So how could she not have? You know what? She probably didn't get trained. There probably was no training. You know.
No.
You know. Oh my.
And besides, she stuck it away. Like you store something like in a file cabinet. You know it's there, but you just never need it.
Right.
And that's where she put it, so she never had to think about it.
Yeah. Plus, there's all kinds of normal psychological reactions to trauma, that cause us to want to forget and cause us to seal these things away. Because otherwise, we'd be living with trauma 24 hours a day. We couldn't function.
And you know that the thing that people forget is that this sexual abuse that happens to children, and it's easy for children to stash things away, to store information, to archive information. And I really didn't know that until I had grandchildren and saw how easily they forgot things. So my father is telling me, I will send you to the crazy house if you tell anyone. I was not going to tell anyone, and I was doing everything I could to stay silent.
That's right. When I was reading the media kit you sent over, you said that you were trained as a child to forget.
Yeah.
Can you describe that?
Yeah. Afterwards, my father would say, now just forget it. Tell yourself, forget it. So I would tell myself, forget it. And if I remembered, Dad would just say, forget it. And it was a hypnotic technique. So that each time I thought about it, I would forget it. And eventually I forgot it.
You know, I tell you, you got to be so careful doing shows like this because the other side is listening too. You know what I mean? And picking up new techniques and new. I'm sure they are. You know what I mean? And I sometimes too. I'm sure there's things I won't talk about because I know that they're getting like a thrill from it. You know, like I know they're out there, man. So now,
of course they are.
Yeah, I know. It's just. So now you and your family. Okay.
Okay, we know that 1 out of 4 girls and 1 out of 11 boys were molested as children. Those are CC numbers. And if you figure that out, that's 48 million adults in the U.S. were molested as children. It's amazing. It's incredible. It's unbelievable. And if that many are molested, you know that there are child molesters out there. And they want to be able to molest without getting caught. So they're looking for tips, of course.
Yeah. It is. It's incredible. Because these are the kind of cases I handle. These are the kind of cases we do. These the majority of them. And whenever I meet somebody new and I mention what I do, either they stand right there and confess right in front of me, it happened to them, or they'll tell me about a friend or a relative that happened to them. So this is like almost every day I hear these stories. It's just talk about trauma. False memory is the deception that silenced millions. So now you and your family decide you're going to take legal action against your parents. Now, most people, and I deal with this all day long, most people in that situation say, well, we have no evidence. We have no proof. What are we going to do? Did you have any of your relatives, your siblings tell you that?
No, because we all met. And I found that as I was a therapist treating clients, that if I talked to them long enough, there was always evidence. I could always find it. But often people don't know what the evidence is.
I totally
think they don't have any.
I totally agree with you, man. If you think you have, if this happened to you, don't talk yourself out of it, man. And definitely approach an attorney. So now, how did you? The family said, well, did your parents have a lot of money? First of all,
they had to. Otherwise, the attorney wouldn't have taken the case. Yeah, they had some equity because he was a doctor.
Okay, there you go. Okay,
so if he hadn't any money, if he didn't have any money, I wouldn't have been able to sue.
I know that's another tragic thing too, because that's even more common. The person who molested me, they have nothing, and they're living on the trailer. That's even So that's important for the audience to know. That's true. Unless the other side has some money. Really, no one's going to take on the case because there's no motivation for It's
right. It makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. That's just the cold hard facts of life, in a capitalist system, anyway. Under capitalism, okay, where we put every profit margin, everything here, medical, Okay, so you guys decided to go to court, and then how did you confront your parents before you decided to go to court, or did you just go straight to court?
I confronted my parents separately. I asked my mother out to lunch. I didn't confront her. I just told her what I had remembered.
Right.
And the first thing she said was, I believe you. And then she went on to say what she did remember. And she said some odd things that probably showed her as in denial. And I didn't want to believe what she was saying. And about 3 months later, I finally did. She knew. I didn't think she knew when I confronted her, but she knew. Yeah. And with my father, I brought him into the therapy room, and I confronted him, and I was really nervous and scared. And so I wrote everything down on a piece of paper. And after I read I say this in the book, after I read each incident, I looked at him, and I'm sure that number 7, he remembered that one. But at the end, he said, I don't remember any of that. I don't remember anything.
Okay, so
he did.
He never made any admissions, though?
No, he never did.
I've also found that people that have survived these kind of traumas in their life, especially the women, will forgive other abusers for the rest of their life. They get sucked into these kind of abusive relationships over and over and over again, and they forgive their abusers for anything that they do. Did you or any of your siblings experience something like that?
I talked a lot about forgiveness in therapy, and what I came up with was it's not my duty to forgive my parents because of the sin that they committed. I'm leaving that up to God.
Gotcha.
I want forgiveness, that's between them and God.
Okay, so then what happens when you approach your parents with the lawsuit? Now, you sued both your parents, your mother and your father?
Yes. My mother, she didn't stop it. So then, by that time, we weren't talking. And we didn't talk, and we didn't talk after that ever. I don't think. No.
Are they alive today?
No, they died.
Okay.
My father died. Last one died about 20 years ago.
Okay. What about, did the family go to the funeral?
My mother's funeral, my father told me that I couldn't go to my mother's funeral, so I didn't.
Right.
And I went to my father's funeral, but my blood pressure was so high.
Right.
It was 180. So I didn't go to the funeral. I went to the memorial service, and I went home.
Okay, but the main focus of the book is on the false memory industry, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So then I guess then how did that factor into your litigation?
It factored in because that's the defense that my parents used. My parents both said that my memories are false, and they got two experts to say my memories were false, Offshee and Loftus.
Okay.
So that's how it came in. And it was a fairly new defense by then. And let's see, what else? Let's see. Yeah.
Okay, when we were talking, when we were talking off the air, and you asked me if I interviewed Loftus, they would never talk to me. Okay, they would never talk to me in a million years. I had her confused with a person who had a big interview and a debate with and did a little documentary film about the false memory people. They actually let her come in and film with them. So no, Loftus would never talk to me. So then. What did they testify in your case?
What did my parents testify
No, well, not the parents, not the experts, to so-called experts to this syndrome, which really is not really a serious medical syndrome that's ever been documented before, just showed up. What was their testimony, their expert testimony in your case?
It was, we can never count that memories are true. Her memories may be false. Basically, that was it. Okay. And then afterwards, of course, they lied about the case.
Oh, how'd they lie?
They left out important stuff, like Loftus left out that I'd won the case.
Okay.
And Offshee just left out so many things. He wrote a chapter in his book about it. And I was just, really, he tried pulling off all that. It was amazing what he did. So I filed an ethics complaint against Loftus because she was with the APA. And she resigned from the APA.
Oh, really? So you filed an ethics complaint and then she resigned. Okay, that's interesting. Now, what did you find out about this organization? Like, it's extremely well funded, right?
It's well funded. Over the course of its lifetime, it was funded $7.75 million, and that's a lot of money for a defense. And it was also a charity, so it was all deductible. So here were accused child molesters established a charity so that they could promote a defense for themselves. And how they ever pulled that off, I'll never know. Let's see, the first thing they had to do was come up with a defense. So they came up with a couple of ideas. They gaslighted the victim. This was early on. They gaslighted the victim. Or Loftus said the memories were suspicious. Loftus said they were caused by hatred and revenge. And she also said they were planted by therapists. And planted by therapists is the one that worked because the Washington Post headlined it. So that became their defense, planted. They were all false memories. So the millions of adults who were molested as kids, all those memories were false. Amazing. I know.
Is that what they said in your case, that it was planted by a therapist?
Yes.
And
Loftus always speculates. It could be that they were planted by her therapist. She never says they were planted.
It's been a while. What made you inspire you to write this book now?
Well, that's a good question. I kept taking notes, and the first time, it was so interesting to me. I think I used to be Nancy Drew fan. I don't know. I should have been a detective, but I got to be a detective when I was investigating all this. And eventually I just started presenting at conferences. I presented data, and people they were kind of interested, but they weren't interested. And at the conference number 17, I told the whole story of the false memory organization, how they started, what they did, where they were, and I got a standing ovation. So I decided to write a book. So that's why the book. I started writing the book in 2019.
And it's only been out about a month, so the ink's not even dry yet. And great reviews too, by the way. 5 out of 5. Yeah, great reviews. And everyone kind of says, "Hey, this isn't a sensational book. This is a very scholarly piece of work here." I was very impressed. But how did the false memory syndrome get started? What was their first case?
Their first case must have been Jennifer Fry. What was their first case? It was when Jennifer Fry accused her father. And now, that case never went to court. I'm trying to think. I'm not sure I know what the first case was. Was it mine? I don't think so. But the first case that went public was Jennifer Fry.
Now, did her father have a lot of money?
He was a college professor. Yeah, she didn't sue him though.
Okay.
Instead, she wrote about childhood trauma. I don't know what the first one was.
I'm just curious, like, did he have enough money to fund this organization? Now, you said that this organization gets donations as well as charges a fee for testifying. Do we have a list of their donors, people who are donating to this?
We only have a list of their members. We can't get a list of their major donors, the ones who donated $100,000. But I think all the members donated.
That's fascinating. Now, I never knew that before. Now, what about? Do we know what they charge for their testimony, for their expert testimony?
Loftus charged me $250 per hour. Offshoot charged $300 per hour. And now Loftus charges, she testifies for celebrities in courtroom trials. She charges $600 an hour.
I believe they testified in the Ghislaine Maxwell trial.
Maxwell, Weinstein. She's testified in half a dozen trials.
Now,
it looks like she might do another one. She might do the Kevin Spacey trial in England. Her name has been mentioned.
Yeah. It's amazing. I was just talking about that last night. It's amazing how the tabloids are all lined up behind Spacey, slanting the reporting on this trial that's going on right now. Now, you said that you were charged $250 an hour. Is this because they were appointed as an expert examiner by the judge? The court appointed them?
My parents hired them, and I had to pay them for a deposition. My parents paid for the rest of their time. Okay.
Oh, so you deposed them?
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, gotcha.
So I paid Loftus about $2,500 and Offshoot about $3,000. About.
Okay. Now, what about since you in the period of time from the litigation to before you wrote the book? Did you have any contact with Offshoot and Loftus?
No, I've never met them. I've never talked to them.
Now, what about since the book's been published? Any kind of repercussions come after you?
I would like to say, not yet. No, nothing has happened. There've been no repercussions, but it's only been a month.
Right. No. But what about like online commentary, trolls, stuff like that? Have you noticed any of that yet?
I have noticed a lot of that in the past, but not since the publication of the book. I even looked online last night. I didn't see anything about me. But it wouldn't surprise me if it showed up today. Negative review.
Yeah, I got reviews on my book on Amazon. People admit they never bought the book. They're reviewing the book. I wouldn't buy this book. It's fascinating. Yeah. I know, and that's one guy was from the West Memphis 3 fan, So, but But you've noticed that in your past that there does seem to be an organized troll network that is fascinated by this topic and agitates the different message boards around this type of topic.
What did you call it? An agitated troll group? Is that what you said?
Yeah, like well, it seems like any of these cases, you just got West Memphis 3, capturing the Freedmans, McMartin. There's a huge group of trolls online bickering back and forth, and kind of causing disruption and chaos around the sober discussion of these topics. Have you noticed that?
I like that term. Yeah, exactly. No. That's let's see. After I filed an ethics complaint against Loftus, I was trolled for about 3 months. The funniest, I finally had to laugh, I admit it. When someone called me a bimbo, and I thought, I am so not a bimbo. And after that, I pretty much laughed at them. I thought they were funny.
Yeah.
And that's been my attitude. It's been what I tried to have as my attitude ever since then. Humor.
Yeah, I hear you with that, but still, it causes confusion. It causes confusion over very serious topics. Now,
to myself, humor to myself.
Yeah. But now
I don't make fun of.
While you haven't experienced any repercussions yet, they are known to sue people who have complaints about them.
Yeah, Loftus actually hasn't sued anyone, but my book is at LLC. Right. So if they decide to sue me, then there won't be any money there.
Gotcha.
Because
But doesn't your book document other harassments and lawsuits by the false memory syndrome?
Yes.
Okay, can you describe some of that?
One of them was Judith Peterson. She was a psychologist in Houston, Texas. She got some of the worst of it because they wanted to make an example of her. They wanted to show that a therapist could be sued criminally, and if found guilty, she and her co-defendants would end up in prison for the rest of their lives.
Wow.
Yeah, but their attorney, Judith's attorney, was so darn good, and he did so much research that he was able to dismiss the accusations against the defendants. Yeah. Yeah, so they, and that was much of it. After that, they kind of quieted down a bit. Another one was Buddy Braun. He was, I think he was sued several times, and he eventually settled for the highest settlement number. I think it was 10,400,000, and that was the highest number.
Now, what about, does it appear that they have some kind of like political influence? Like if they were able to finagle this thing with the nonprofit and while charging for testimony, that's unusual. Any appearances of political influence?
That I don't know.
Okay, fascinating. Were any of it? I'm sorry?
You can look at their board members. There were some powerful board members that they had.
Do you recall who they are?
Martin Orne was one.
And who's that?
He was with the CIA.
Oh, Martin who?
Martin Orne, O-R-N-E.
Really? And what did he do at the CIA?
Oh, I don't know.
Okay. Okay. So they got a CIA fellow there on their board. Who else?
They have a couple of them, and people say, well, the CIA was involved, and I say that maybe CIA members molest their kids, and that's why they joined. So I don't know. I just know they're there.
Well, there does seem to be a historical of CIA blackmailing, using children. Richard Kerr, one example, we've had him on the show. He talks about it. It was mostly MI6 in England and in Ireland and stuff like that. But that does seem to be a pattern. We even had John Kirkawa on the show who has described that kind of thing too as well. So that one surprised me too. Oh yeah, that one just surprised me too much. CIA, yeah, blackmail. But that's interesting. Okay. Go ahead.
What really interested me was how they managed to pitch their story so quickly at the time. It went viral, and there were 300 articles out there on false memories. How they did it was amazing. They used rhetoric, they used repetition. They just got their story out, and it got to be the cool story that everyone wanted to cover. And I was not part of that story. No victim like myself was part of that story. It was all Loftus and parents.
Yeah, it reminds me of the McMartin case where the 60 Minutes, and I believe they did that in the home of either Loftus or Afshi. In their home, this interview was done, and with the McMartin case, and they were, do these people look like pedophiles? And then it just turned the whole public perception and the whole public support away from the victims toward these poor defendants. So how do you think that comes about? Do you think that comes about by just hiring a big PR team, or is there sympathetic forces out there?
I think it's a combination. I could find no evidence that they hired some PR, although I do think that some of their board members had some PR in the kind of work that they did. But I think at the time it was a story that was easy to sell because we all wanted to believe it. Because if millions of adults were molested as kids, what does that say about us?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was, too, that whole element of the satanic ritual abuse that was so highly reported in the 80s. And then one day, like, just a switch was flipped. And, no, that was all just a big hoax. Have you experienced any, in your research for the book, any contact with that kind of activity?
I've experienced I've seen people silence others, but I didn't see any ritual abuse. I didn't see a lot of it. I'm sure it happened. Of course it did.
Yeah.
But they didn't admit it. We'll just say that.
And you said when you've seen people silence others. Describe that. I was silenced a lot when I first started doing this. People say, don't say things like that about your father. Respect your father. Isn't it about time you got over this? You should forgive him and get on with your life. This won't bring back your childhood. This is all stuff that we tell victims to shut them up. And if the victims decide to sue, we tell them, your memories are false. I read about this. And we don't, as far as I can tell, we say this to victims, but I don't know that we treat perps as people who actually did it. I think we kind of say, oh, he would never do anything like that. So we dismiss the victims and we dismiss their accusations. Mm-hmm. Makes it easy for perps. Yeah, and I tell you, when you said that thing about, well, get over it, I can recall talking to a case one time, and the parents said, well, get over it. It happened to me too. You'll get over it. And obviously, it happened to you too, and you allowed it to happen to your child later on. Words just stuck me like a knife right there when you said that. Now, you mentioned earlier about how your dad was using almost like a hypnotic technique to cause you to forget. Did your brothers and sisters describe that same kind of hypnotic technique?
Oh, I don't know. What I kind of recall is that I was the one who taught them to forget, because my dad asked me to do that. And I knew that forgetting would keep them safe at home. They wouldn't have to go to the crazy house. So I taught them, just say, forget it.
What about, did your dad ever try to get you to recruit your friends into this kind of activity with him?
No.
Okay.
Go ahead. I could never have sleepover stuff.
How come?
Because Dad would just go into the room and do stuff. And so I couldn't invite people over. I've asked people, did I ever invite you over for a sleepover because you invited me? And they'll say no. I couldn't invite friends.
Because your parents didn't allow it, or because you didn't initiate it?
No, because Dad would molest them.
No, I know that. Yeah. So then it was you who declined to invite them over, or your parents didn't allow you to invite them over?
I think they told me, and I just realized it was something I could never do.
Gotcha.
And I think my parents did not allow me to do that.
Gotcha, too, because, again, your friends would say, hey, that's unusual for your father to get into a shower with you. Well, why do you do that? And then they would go home and tell their parents, so that would be
Oh, yeah, exactly. And I could never tell anyone that.
Right. So another big part of this is isolation. You isolate your family from the world and keep them, keep the secrets, Now,
yes.
Do you think your father had any kind of a training in mind control and hypnosis in order to be able to, or it just came natural to him?
I don't know. It might have been something he learned in med school. I don't know. As far as I know, it came natural to him. I figured he'd read some medical books, so he knew about this.
Yeah, but obviously it does come natural to some people, because you see these pimps and these street pimps, and you see how they target these young women, and they get in their head, man. They control them. They just control every thought in their head with no training whatsoever. So you wonder how some people just have that kind of gene. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you're right, yeah.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Because there's no training for pimps, right?
Well, some of them grow up in families of pimps, so they know older pimps. But
okay.
but there is something for sure. There's a gene in this. I'm watching this trial right now. Daryl Brooks. You can watch it on YouTube. And this guy, he mowed down a bunch of people at a parade in Wisconsin, and the guy is defending himself, and he's had issues with the past girlfriends, manipulating them, controlling them. And this guy is able to manipulate the judge, the female judge. He's in her head. He's taking over this courtroom in this way. This guy has no training in this kind of stuff whatsoever, but just there's a gene in there, Isn't that fascinating?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've become addicted to this trial. I'm watching it every day.
Okay, I'm going to watch it too.
Yeah, well, you can go back and watch the past ones. It really is fascinating. Is there anything you want the audience to know about this book in your life that I haven't asked you?
I would like to know that I would like to have everyone treat victims with respect. Do not naturally assume that their accusations are false, even if you don't really want to believe it. Assume that they're telling you the truth, because you've got to know it was really hard for them to tell you. They're afraid that you're going to dismiss it, and it takes a lot of courage to tell someone. So just have some respect.
That's so true. If a kid would say, hey, something was stolen from my room, you wouldn't say, oh, Cassie, you're imagining it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
but
exactly.
But again, there's something in our head that this one topic, well, maybe the kid's making it up. Well, maybe, it's just so bizarre. This has to be ingrained into us in some ways. Now, what about the healing process that Lynn Crook went through? You described this therapy session that caused you to trigger this memory back. But what about after? Okay, now you remember. Did you go back for therapy and healing?
Yeah, ever since then, and I moved to Seattle about 4 years ago, but I've been in therapy ever since, and eventually I ended up going just once a month. My husband and I were also in therapy before the trial and after the trial, so that was very helpful. Therapy has really helped. It helps to have someone who cares about you, but who is also very conscious to talk to you about all this. I've been through 3 therapists, 4. I'm starting another one here in Seattle.
It's great if you can find a good therapist. Let's say that, because a lot of these, you got to watch out too, man, because you go into these therapy sessions, and a lot of these therapists and psychiatrists and psychologists, they're hired hacks, and they're working for the court, and they just obey the highest bidder. These are evil people, man, who sell children to the highest bidder in custody evaluations and stuff like that.
Custody evaluations, I know. I'm so glad that I'm not involved in that. That's got to be really tough. Oh.
Yeah, and it's just amazing because there's kickbacks with the judges and the lawyers and stuff like that. It's a horrific. So if
it is.
And these are the same people. You look in the phone book, say, "Oh, let me find a therapist." And it's the same guy. It's the same guy. It's just the same guy. Now, what about your brothers and sisters? Did they go into therapy?
Let's see. One sister did. 2 sisters have been in therapy, but not for long, I think. And I think this is like most families. I don't talk to all my siblings. I haven't talked to all my siblings. I talk to 2 at a time, and I think each of us talks just to 2 others.
Yeah.
It's too bad.
I know, right? Yeah, it's just it's amazing, like the talking, is a punishment. It's talking. I can't talk to you because it's something about that too as well. But are there any siblings who deny that this happened?
Well, there was one. I'd say I don't think so. There's one that denies that it happened to her.
Okay.
And I think I have another sibling who's been remembering it for a while. But they all know that something happened. Yeah, they all know.
What about cousins and stuff like that? Like, do you have like aunts and uncles that said, "Oh yeah, we'd never let our kids near your father"?
Oh yeah, I had an uncle.
And what did he say?
I told him what I remembered, and he told me about the time that he'd come to visit us with his wife, with my aunt. And he said, "Dad left for your bedroom right after dinner." And I asked Lucille where he was. And she said, "Oh, the kids have a hard time getting to sleep." And my uncle said he was pretty obvious about what he did to you. Yeah, he was. And that's, I guess, another reason why we couldn't have friends over.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's isolation's a big, even with abusive relationships between husband and wife, men and women, isolation's a huge factor in all of that. If we just could all get along, Okay. So, the book's been very well received. Are there any plans for another book?
Well, I already wrote a cookbook. That was about 30 years ago.
Okay.
So this is actually my second book. So I have no plans for a second book.
Well, real quick.
On the subject.
You got any recipes you want to share?
Sure, I do.
Yeah, I know. I'm vegan myself, so that wouldn't be much good for me.
Okay.
But back to the healing process, though. Now, so you're back in therapy now. Do you still does this trauma from your childhood still affect your life today? Like different issues in your life, and then you can trace it back to that.
That's a good question. Different issues. Sometimes I get a little scared, but I am calmer than I used to be. I still get apprehensive, but I'm essentially calmer. I'm much, much happier. My sense of humor is a lot better. If I get scared of something, I kind of try to figure out why. If I think of something, I think, now, why am I thinking that? I do more of that than I used to even 10 years ago. So I think I'm better off having had so much therapy.
Now, what about
answer your question?
Yes, but what about when you had that first panic attack, that first anxiety? Did you see a doctor who put you on drugs right away? And did that happen?
No. I just forgot about it. I mean, I tried to repress. I told myself, this is no big deal. I'll get over it. I'm just fine.
Just think of what a different path it would have took if you would have met one of those doctors that started pumping you up with drugs, and then you covering up your emotions, and you're zonked out for the next 20 years.
Oh, geez.
I had a guest on this show that was an absolute zombie for 20 years, man. He is just, yeah. This guy, man. The first, we did 2 interviews with him. The first interview was, we just got everything out of him, all his emotions and stuff like that. But the recording didn't come out correctly, and then we had to do a second one. Just wasn't as good. We didn't capture that same emotion. But 20 years of your life, man, living as a zombie, zonked out on a bucket full of pills every day. What about any other kind of self-medicating? Because that's so common too. Almost everybody with an addiction problem, a substance abuse problem, originates back to a sexual abuse problem.
Yeah. Okay. I did Chardonnay. I did wine.
Right.
I overserved for several years. And I have some Xanax in my closet that I use maybe once a month.
Gotcha.
But I'm not addicted to it. I don't think so. But that's about all I use for trauma and anxiety these days.
Yeah, no, if you were addicted to Xanax, you would know it. Because if you went one day without it, that's the worst withdrawals that you could possibly have is those benzo, diazepam, Valium, Xanax. Oh, my God, yeah. And especially if you're mixing it with wine, too. That's a whole other story, too. What about your siblings?
Okay, I won't do that then.
Yeah, no, yeah, definitely.
My siblings, any addictions, I don't know. I'm not really, again, I'm not really in touch with all of them. Maybe one, but she's not addicted. What
about relationship problems with your siblings?
I saw one of them and I went to see a therapist once, and that was really helpful together. We had 2 sessions. And I realized that my problem with her was a lack of boundaries. So that was very helpful. But the rest of them, we just don't talk much. Yeah,
but lack of boundaries with you or lack of boundaries in her life with other people?
Lack of boundaries with me.
Gotcha. But now, with even the siblings you're not in contact with, you would notice if they had frequent divorces and remarriages and repeated relationships, failed relationships all the time.
Yeah, I have one like that, and I notice problems even though if I'm not in contact with them. Sure.
Gotcha. Now for this book, right? We've been talking about this book. False Memories, The Deception That Silenced Millions. The author is Lynn Crook. You can find her on Facebook at Lynn Crook, Lynn Crook, Crook. Must have had a lot of jokes when you were a kid growing up in 3rd grade, right? I mean, like Crook. The website.
No, that. I was Murphy growing up. Okay.
Oh, that's right. Your husband went through it in 3rd grade. I should interview him. LynnCrook.com. Now, Lynn. Who is the audience that should buy this book? Because I know a lot of guys listening to my show, they're going to buy this book right away because it talks about False Memory Syndrome Foundation.
The millions of adults who were molested as kids who have been told that their memories are false. Mm-hmm. And also therapists who have been silenced or sued. And also professors. Psychology professors. It'd be so great if they would read this book, because most of the textbooks these days talk about false memories and talk about how malleable memory is. Yeah, there's an audience. Okay, so if you're out there and your siblings are telling you, you experienced something like this, and your siblings or your mother, your father's telling you, oh, you're crazy, you're making that up. That's a dream. You had a dream. It's a false memory, right? Then you should definitely reach out and find False Memories, The Deception That Silenced Millions. If you're in the field of treating these children, this is, again, will open up your eyes. If you're Facebook.com, you go to Lynn Crook or LynnCrook.com. Check her out there. Lynn, I can't thank you enough. I know how difficult it is to come back and remember these memories and talk about them on the air, but it is important. And I know that it's not just the interview, but it's leading up to the interview. All these memories come back, and then after the interview, there are all these memories in your head. So I understand how much work this is out of your life, and we do appreciate it. And it is good work, And so we thank you for your service and your time. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Thank you, ma'am. Good night.
Good night.